Shalom, human families of the planet Earth. How y'all doing? You now tuned in live to Super Heru Radio.
Hey.
Cool. Tune in live with my co-host Selena, the Empress of 10,000 years, Amor, the Prince of Tears, all the human families of the planet Earth. Okay. All the human families of the planet Earth. We want to say love and light to you. Thank you again for tuning in once again to what we be doing. We be going in hard. And basically, there's a lot of different situations going down, as usual, but we want to keep you abreast to the aspect of it that is true, right, and exact as much as possible. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes a situation where we all are striving to be right, exact, and correct. Yet it seems that the more you want to do that, inshallah, the more sometimes you be put in situations where you have to be around people that are the exact opposite. What I'm trying to tell everybody nowadays is that, look, man, just because you see people on TV talking one thing don't necessarily mean that they live in that. And just because, you know, you like how somebody may present themselves in one thing don't necessarily mean that they're going to always be like that in terms of representing themselves for you or for the people. So with all that being said, we're basically gearing up or to build on is the fact that most of the situations that we find in ourselves in right now are really based upon what other people have done to mess certain things up. You know what I'm saying? And when that goes down, you wind up in situations where you wind up picking up the slack. So sometimes people want to look at reoccurring situations happening to you. Well, put it like this. A lot of times people want to get into instances of blame, you know, when it comes into, you know, getting out of certain ruts and things that we may find ourselves in. But what happens with that, when you internalize energy and, most importantly, people who do not have your best benefit or your best benefit in mind, then you wind up becoming somewhat subject to a lot of the erroneous situations that they are involved in. So, like, for instance, I'm somebody who knows that the original man, you know what I'm saying, is God. Like, that's what I know. And I know in my own life that is so because I have seen everybody in the universe trying to tell him or us that we not that. So when I talk about the original man, I'm talking about original man and woman. I'm talking about us as original people, you know what I mean? And coming from a perspective of a people who have been told that they were and are the worst things in the world, you know? And a lot of times it's not until other people come around and they start to see, or I would say it's not until sometimes other members of other nations come in and see how things are going or how people be flipping when it comes to, you know, what it is that we provide and put out there. We wind up in situations where we don't feel like we can't even trust our own people, because to keep it real, a lot of us can't. Because the people who are running the interference in terms of your national character and your national identity are not the people who you would think. They're not necessarily these you know, Caucasoids or whatever, as much as everybody hate the white man and hate the police and things like that. It's not always them, yo. A lot of times, or most times, it's the people who are working together to keep this thing exactly where it is. And that, for whatever reason, we saw in the Matrix. Basically, it busts down to the white man, the black woman, keep it real with you, the white man, the black woman, and they basically decided who was going to be in the Matrix and who wasn't, who was going to be able to free themselves and who wasn't, who was going to be in a situation to be able to live in so-called Zion without any without any jurisdiction. You know what I'm saying? There was a part in the movie where he said, wait a minute, so how I know I could even trust you? She said, you right. You probably can't. But I'm the best you got at this point. So, again, when I say this black woman now, I'm not talking about the original conscious goddess who understands who and what she is. I'm talking about the goddesses that's out here protecting their own children from members of their own family because they can't trust the shit they're going to do to them. I'm talking about the women who be really wanting to be. I'm not talking about the women who really want to be there and have their baby father in the situation, but this nigga just happens to be a piece of shit, so he don't want to be there. I'm talking about the sister who, regardless to how bad or whatever it is, she's still not bad-mouthing herself or her children or her people or selling her birthright for a loaf of bread. There's not that many sisters that's out here that's on it like that now. And other black women will tell you that. You dig? When you look at the image of the prophet, when he is standing by the water, bringing salvation to humanity, the black woman is there listed as humanity. She's in his arms as he is straddling the shore and the surf or the beach. And there he's saying that when we saying we uplift the form of humanity, the first aspect of human existence, again, is coming out of the original woman. So we can't have an uplift of humanity unless she is involved or unless she chooses to uplift herself out of her present condition, because her present condition has her listed as something other than something little more than or basically on the lines of a sexual animal or deviant that can only twerk and have rapper babies and put weaves in their hair and talk about how niggas ain't shit and this and that. Like, this is what they have modeled or created a model for black women to just walk into and be. And that's not again something. Have a good night, okay? That's not something to be trivialized. This is something that's coming out of a real context of societal norm that has almost become the prerequisite to the point where, like I said, these dudes put up a billboard in New York. This is over 2 years now. This billboard was up there. And it said that the most dangerous place for any child to grow up is in the womb of a black woman. I watched thousands of black women when I was in New York walk past that shit and not even look up and not even notice. But then the wild shit is that on the picture of the baby that they use happened to be a baby with their own hair. So it's really weird, where it's almost like they almost put it out there like, once the black woman have the baby, then what we want to do is take that baby from her so that way she can raise our babies and then so forth and so on, because that's what they've engendered y'all to do. They've engendered it. They've engendered a society where nobody is taking care of their own kid. And then when you actually are a mother or are a father who is there with your children constantly, they looking at you like you doing something wrong or they make excuses as to why they can't do it. Oh, I can't do it. I can't homeschool. I don't have the patience for that. I don't have the patience for that. So really what you're saying is you don't have the patience to be with your child all the time. That's cool. And teaching, that's cool. Just don't hate on me because I'm working on my patience enough to build it up to be able to do that for the past 5 years consecutively. But the thing about it is when you really doing your dean like that and you on it like that and parents are seeing the results in your child, and then start comparing their own shit to it, they start hating. Because what happens is, what parents is, another thing parents don't tell you is that when you grow up, parents are more competitive than the children a lot of times. Parents are more competitive with their children, and children are competitive with themselves. I'm watching it. I'm watching people in Amor's Taekwondo class gauge their child's development based on his. To the point that
she was 7, older than Amor. She took her kid out and was like, well, he can't do everything that Amor can do, and it's starting to make him angry. So we're going to put him in the class with the other older kids. and not the private class. It's in a BBC class. So it's like black boy club, black belt
baby
club,
black belt.
baby black belt.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just 2 people per class. So more than the 2 people class, this little boy that was been working with him, his mom was going to take him to the older class so he can work with other kids that are just as disgruntled, because when he's working with them more, she doesn't like it.
He ain't doing it good because he's 7 and Amour's knocking it out. Now, I'm just using Amour as an example of an Asiatic boy with knowledge of himself. From the time that he been born, the only people he been with, mommy and daddy, who've been on him every day about trying to get it. So you can imagine this. He goes through bouts of like little instances where he want to have shit his way, do his little tantrum and shit like that, because, you know, this society make you feel like if you have one child, you don't really have a family. You only have a family when you got more than one. So before me and Selena had a baby, it was like, oh, y'all cool, y'all together and all of that, but, you know, they ain't really want to see us as together. Then once we had the baby, then it was like, oh, that's great. When y'all going to have another one? It's like we just had this one. We just had this one. People ask you, oh, when you going to have the next one? You going to have the next one? Because they have engendered our people in this country to believe that anything that they have out of themselves ain't enough. Like, really do the knowledge to what I'm saying, man. They have made you feel that your breast milk ain't enough. They done made you feel that your breast and behind and whatever ain't enough. They done made you feel that your eyebrows and your hair ain't long enough, good enough, thick enough, straight enough, curly enough, broke off enough, split end enough, whatever it is. It ain't enough. You got to put something else in you, on you, around you, under you, intervene, whatever it is. Because this country, this business called the United States cannot function on the merit of character and true justice, because it is not a country. It is not obligated to do that. These dudes are trying to draw water from a rock, man. The United States is not a country, so you can't deal with it as that. You got to be in your country and deal with them from the perspective of being a foreigner to this thing. Really, we're like the foreign domestics or the domestic foreigners, because we're from here, but we're not from the here. The United States, the only difference between the United States and America is the United States represents the corporate jurisdiction. You understand? It's not a country. It represents the corporate aspect of business, commercialism. Therefore, a business cannot have nationality. All corporations, if they worth any salt, are multinational corporations, meaning that any place that corporation is in, it takes the nationality of the business of whatever country that's hosting it. See what I'm saying? The United States don't have it the way it used to. I got a copy of that letter the prophet wrote in 1928. Had the address on it, no zip code. No zip code in the letter. 1928. So what, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60? No. Actually, no, I'm bugging. When did zip code come out? 1933? 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 2000. That's only 80 years these zip codes been out. That means zip code, mortgage, property tax, income tax, water tax. All that shit is only 80 years old, man. My grandmother was older than that when she died. But I say that to say that these niggas want you to believe that this thing has always been like this. You know what I'm saying? That like in the 1700s, niggas was paying income tax and all of that. Like, we wasn't doing that. We only started falling into that after a lot of our people decided that they wanted to leave their own government and abandon their own estates. Your estate is perpetually based upon your inheritance. Your inheritance is the gift given to you by God as being descendant of one of the Noahidic tribes and Noahidic tribes that sojourned out of the ancient lands of Canaan, which is over here in America. But because these niggas over here don't want me to have nothing, I gotta always wear, kente cloth and dashikis and all this other type of shit. But guess what? In the 70s and the 80s and all of that, when niggas was wearing dashikis and afros like that, niggas in Africa wasn't rocking all of that. Nigga was not doing that. They was not rocking afros and shit like that in Africa until after us, dude. They wasn't wearing dashikis. Dashikis ain't indigenous to Africa. That's an American concept, like fortune cookies. You know what I'm saying? Like all of that was created in America. Chinese food was created in America, man. You go to China, they ain't eating the shit that you eating at the cat store in the corner. You understand what I'm saying? Like the same way they invented. You know what I'm saying? It's real talk. Like we're done. Like you got dudes that's not gay. Do the knowledge to how weak the game is now. You got dudes that's not gay, that's acting gay just to get on. Like what part of the game is that now? You got. Yeah, I was watching that shit on the award show with Rocky when they put him out there. They put him on blast out there with that homosexual dude who came out, the black basketball player. You seen him all on his face. He's like, yo, they got me looking crazy out here right now. Let me just try to flip this shit so I don't totally play myself. And they just went in about trap lord. But real talk, that's what I'm talking about. If you don't stand for nothing, they will put you in a position to look like you co-signing shit that you are against. So because, nigga, hip-hop is all-inclusive now and all these dudes is so, like, soulless with the music, anything can happen to it now. They can do anything. It's not even the point of people not being good no more. It's not even about that. It ain't even about people being good no more. It's about the fact that people have become so mundane and whack that whoever sounds a little bit good is better than the rest. This is with music. This is with fashion. This is with education. This is with everything, dude. Real talkie, man. Real walkie-talkie. This is not a joke. These people have literally bled out aspects of reality to support a fictitious reality that subsists itself upon anything that is weaker than its original form. So anything weaker or that's coming from a weaker aspect of the original form, that's what's going to blow up. Anything strong in its original form cannot. That got to take an ink. You have Moors out here telling bold-faced lies. And when I say Moors, I'm talking about original people, black men, black women. Right? You got them telling straight up lies about shit. You got niggas saying shit now like, yo, the Prophet's Trust can be revoked whenever the U.S. want to do it. Word? Word? Well, I'm not an etymologist, but from my understanding, when somebody files something under the term irrevocable, right, I was under the assumption that word irrevocable meant you can't revoke it, right? So I don't know how something that is irrevocable and has been in existence since 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, we in 100 years of this thing, that allegedly don't exist, that allegedly don't work, But yet and still, every other day I'm running into different people with eels and bays and stuff at the end of their name. So what's the hold up? The hold up is what it always has been, is the fact that when our nation finally ratified what it wanted to be or what it was going to do in the world, it resolved it in such a way that it could not be refuted. Therefore, it had to be unilaterally accepted. However, at the time that this was put into action, our house or our nation was divided. And so the U.S. corporation that was created to facilitate an aspect of corporate business for us as a tax shelter to protect us from what our cousins and them from our Europa was doing with their slaves, and according to the law of necessity, they were able to swoop in and take over until the real ones could come back. However, to make sure that it would take longer for the real ones to come back, the pseudo situation of chattel slavery was then created, and then the pacts and secrets was then put forth to cement it through what we call Freemasonry. So the aspect of universal compassion when it comes to our people coming into knowledge of their true self, that point has never actually been allowed to foster itself due to the very educational system in the early United States. In the early United States, they were creating what they call Moors Indian schools that was out there reorganizing and re-educating these people as to who and what their real knowledge and wisdom and understanding of themselves really was. They called the Union undeclared Moors now, who had just came into the United States, Buffalo Soldiers, because in ancient times, the people of that complexion were known as the Big Buffalo people. There's legends about us as the gods in their culture that taught them the ways of the world. But when they decided to adopt the term Native American, they was really better off with Indians. Once they took Native American, the term Native American represents one who was enslaved and put into perpetual bondage in America and was not necessarily from that place, but is associated with that place. That's what it say in the Oxford Dictionary in 1824 when they was first recreating this whole Reconstruction thing. Back in 1864, the term American Indian was synonymous with the term nigger. So an American Indian, right? So a Moor, undeclared or redefined, became an American Indian, and from American Indian, you get into the Negro or the nigger thing, right? But a Native American, which came out of an Indian, never had a direct nationality in that way because the national names could not be the ones that was there. That's the one I want you to follow. So, like I said, this becomes a constant game of catch up instead of keep up. You know what I'm saying? So when you ask black people, as much as they don't like the term black, or as much as they don't like the term they call themselves African American, and you ask them who came up with that, Google it. Go online. Who coined the term African American? And when did that change from Afro American? And when did that change from Negro or Black American? What you'll find is references to the NAACP. And I told you that the NAACP, Boule, whatever, all work in tandem. You can't be a member of the Boule and not be a member of the NAACP, honorary or otherwise, or auxiliary or otherwise. That's just how the game works. So where we used to have things like patronage and stuff like that, all of that switched up after the 20s and the 30s. Because anybody that wasn't dealing with the Moorish thing was dealing with the Garveyite thing, which really was the same thing. And if they wasn't dealing with that, then they was going to deal, and they was dealing with the Muslim thing, or the Ahmadiyya thing. And if they wasn't dealing with that, then they was in a white man jurisdiction in white America, where they was dealing with the white Jesus thing. Those was all the Negroes under Jim Crow. But there's a book called The History of the Black Nationalist Movement in America. And they said after the 1800s, towards the end of the Civil War, whatever, certain provisions and stuff had to be made for slaves, with people who they referred slaves, but who were practicing Islam, because it was hard to maintain jurisdiction over them, and hard to get the work that they wanted out of them, because they would have to pray 5 times a day, which then would cut into the work time. Then they couldn't be eating pork and shit like that. Then they couldn't be forced to go to church. So these were provisions for Muslims, right, in the South, who happened to be caught up in the slave thing. These Muslims that they talking about, or were talking about, again, were Moors who had and knew what their nationality, original government, and all that stuff was, and then through the Sundry Free Moor petition was able to put stuff in motion for them to eventually be able to get bonded out. Perfect example is the case of Prince, what was his name? I think it was Prince Yusuf Muhammad. I think it was Yusuf Muhammad, I believe, who was there and petitioned, and the president at the time, I think it was Rutherford B. Hayes, wound up having to give him money and gold and pay the Emperor of Morocco and all of that for him to go back home. But in the process of that, he decided that he didn't want to go back to the North Africa, Morocco. He said he would go to Liberia. See what I'm saying? Because Liberia, a lot of the so-called black Republicans were advocating that as a land for Moors to go to, or original people to go to, until the thing worked, until the land grants and all of that with the United States ceased. The only reason why you have other nationalities here is because our people, unfortunately, the Moorish Americans, or the Moors of the ancient empire, right, who existed here, whatever, they had their nationality and stuff stolen from them. And those books were opened up, and with Cestui trusts created by the Vatican in 1666, were then allowed to be put on anybody that could be bagged up and erroneously labeled as property. And because these original Moors and these original people put themselves outside of their own constitutional fold by going along with these foreign names by they friends from Al Europa and Albion and these places, you know what I'm saying? That's like if I go to Japan right now and they start calling me Coco Jean. Like, I don't know what that means. And I just allow them to do that and not check them, then that's me acknowledging the stereotypical aspect of myself that they can somehow feel superior in and have through condescending infatuation. But once I let them know that's not a cool term to define anybody with a nationality, then they know not to do it again. Mm-hmm. So because all of these, our people, allow us to constantly, like Russell Simmons just put out or just advocated some whack documentary with Harriet Tubman boning some white dude and then her husband filming it, and then she uses the tape to blackmail him to get her freedom. Of all people, Harriet Tubman, you know what I'm saying, who, number one, would shoot herself in the head based on the stories that you hear this woman did, rather than lay down with some white man or whatever. But again, who is the one advocating to talk about how funny it is? A nigga. You see? A boule nigga. But because he have money and because he, you know, people get paid by him, we have to absorb the fact that this person is out, he's sick, and has a warped version of what it means to be an original man in the world, and is so strong enough to perpetuate and support it enough that every piece of stitch or music or whatever this dude advocates or puts out, in some way make us look like we're some sort of animal. You dig what I'm saying? And that's not cool. Like, I'm starting to see other races lampoon and nigga themselves out now, like Harold and Kumar, you know, stuff like that. Where you got, you know, or that Asian dude who always wears the dresses and stuff and always, you know, talks about taking it in the butt, or for Saturday Night Live, them type of guys. Like, I'm starting to see more of that now, you know. But specifically, it seemed like we so used to it that we don't see nothing wrong with it no more. When I looked at that VMA thing, anybody remember us in Brooklyn know how we used to get down with the lowrider bikes and all of that. So when I see these lanes ride down Dean Street like that, lanes riding down a strip like that, I was like, damn, they really colonized our hood, man. Like Brooklyn, it's really like, damn, it's like the last outpost, man. Like, I remember when white folk wouldn't even want to breathe in Brooklyn. They wouldn't even want to admit that they lived there. And like, Brooklyn really used to be a foreign country, man. It really, it started out as a Dutch republic. And at the time, the Dutch that was running it, again, was a Moor named Amsterdam. Through the knowledge, get the book by J. Rogers, what is it called? Africans in America. Perfect example. There's always a book, you know. But like I said, it's become such a minstrel show that it's like the most basic shit. So long as it sound a little bit good, sound way better than any and everything else that's out there. So that's how you know we about due for some sort of new form of human interaction. Yeah, the Miley Cyrus shit, right? With the tongue thing, like, it's like, come on, King, come on. You're crazy. But again, this chick, out of all people to be turned out in the industry, Juicy J, he made that happen. And you know how 3-6 get down. So, big up 3-6 Mafia, you know what I'm saying? But, real talk, man, it's like, whatever you consider to be original, you have to learn now how to preserve that. And because our so-called movement has gotten to the point that the stagnation due to the avaricious commercial nature of it have overshadowed the true ecclesiastical principles of it. Meaning that when you are really dealing in the isonomy, then you don't deal with, so you can't have certain energy around you. You can't. So as much as I would love to build with certain people that we used to be cool with and stuff like that, based upon choices and things that they have chosen to make, they have extricated themselves from being able to be around us. But what people usually do is transfer that responsibility. They usually transfer that responsibility to the other person. Because what the 85% is dealing with, one is the 85 years of chattel slavery between 1774 and 1865 that was continuously put on them to create the perpetual sidebar reality that we call the United States, or help perpetuate the myth that that's how it always was. And then two, they dealing with the 580 years, meaning the between our calendar and their calendar. So you got 85 in terms of 85 years. Then you've got 580, which again is 85. This boils down to 13, which is knowledge, culture, all being born to the truth. Culture is one's freedom to free one's dome, one's way of life. Yet, if your way of life is a jungle way of life, because we live in the concrete jungle, we live in the wilderness of North America, or the hells of North America, the only way to get out of that is to walk out of the corpus jurisdiction that has been set up for those people who became traitors and walked into the nation that was set up by their forefathers. So when the white man create a business, for instance, his business will be called Leibowitz and Sons, or Garrison and Associates, or Harrisburg and Mouskowitz LLC, something like that. When black people set up businesses, they'll set up shit like Supercuts or Bad to the Bone, or you know what I'm saying? Some nuanced play on word thing. Now that's a cultural difference, right? But that's also because we don't really understand the premise in terms of business and the United States being a business and not a business first, a country second. The only people that can be acknowledged by the United States are people with no honor and title of nobility. That's what it says in Title 22. That no emolument from any foreign power or emperor or prince or anything. So remember, in 1926, the Sultan Abdulaziz and the House of Saud reestablished the Islamic monarchy derived from the ancient Canaanite monarchies from back in the days described in the Treaty of Jeddah that came the next year as the dominions of the Hejaz, and the Najd. Then in 1928, the Prophet was then given the Islamic mandate back by the same Sultan that initiated the instance for all European monarchies to fall under the original Islamic ones. Therefore, the Moorish Science Temple of America became the vehicle or the doorway to get back into the ecclesiastical government that was set off by the descendants of the Moabites, represented then by the Sultan in the House of Saud. Yeah. They all out there. They never leave. You know what I'm saying? They all represent that ilk. So when our people started abandoning their obligations in their society and decided to help this dude build up his society, that was a sin against their mother and their father, which would be Allah. Yeah, I think we know him. T-Bone played for Public Enemy doing that. You know what I'm saying? So this situation is created for us to never, to never go back to a time or go back to a status in which we are living and doing things for ourselves. We're the only community or black community or African American community, whatever they're calling it this year, is the only community that only has centralized unity around specific clergy organizations, such as the church, the mosque. That's it. Other than that, you have the sports, right? And then the streets and drugs and now rap. So these are the lanes that are left out for those remnants of a people who gave up more to get less, but to bring about what people refer to as progress. You know what I mean? This aspect of progress, moving ahead by accepting the past and getting over it. Yet still it seems that everybody else can hold on to what happened to them, but you always got to get past it. So when you, in the aspect of a black man, go to them for, let's say, reparations, that's, again, committing another sin against yourself because you weren't the original Negro. The original Negro was them, the whites, W-I-G-H-T, which means those of an unfortunate kind, a supernatural term for ghost or creature, which is why we can call them creatures of law. You have to understand, when they talk about shit like the Wild West, they talk about a time when they was lawlessly out there raping, murdering, killing Moors all over. And then the so-called Indians, who were renegade white people who helped them do it, could then occupy the lands, and then the white man came and stole it from them, looking at them as traitors for living amongst us in the first place, and then got rid of them. But essentially, we're talking about a succession of years in which there's a book called, I was talking to the elder queen about this a couple of days ago. There was a book called Cannibalism, Germs and Viruses, something like that. And there's a section in the book where they talk about how they went into ancient Ethiopia, the Italians and all of that, and what they were striving to do was create a manner where they could harness the genetic energy and the genetic communication bioluminescently or biologically out of us. So they went and kidnapped, this is a Jesuit ritual, they went and kidnapped these Moors, who they referred to as Moors. They kidnapped these Moors, and when they killed them, what they did was they stuffed them like taxidermy with herbs and all types of stuff. There's also a form of necromancy. They stuffed their bodies and stuff. They drained the blood out, stuffed the bodies with all the herbs and all of that, and then hung the bodies out in the sun. As the bodies dried and swelled up and dried out, a liquid started to come out and drip down that they would then harvest into a vessel. Then this liquid from these Moors and stuff they did this to, they would brought back to the Vatican and then created what they call and added it to the holy water and all of that for the Holy Father and them to partake. Another form of pineal extraction or essence eating. You understand? So these are things that they do to us. We don't do that type of stuff to them. You understand? The farthest we went was the torture chambers and the dungeons that existed in the medieval times and in the dungeons of Saleh and all of that over there in the continent of North Africa. Excuse me, the inlet over there that they call North Africa. The actual, that's true. That's what I'm talking about. But think about what I'm saying. They actually took these people who were from a certain time period. They come from a certain time period with a certain genetic connection to the time. And they take these people, these high priests, they do this all over the planet. They're doing this all over the planet. Take these people and then literally harvest their essence to add to whatever nefarious thing that they're trying to add to their own genetics due to them dying out. This form of arcane ritual is kept going through aspects of fraternal organizations like Freemasonry. That's the problem. The two biggest rituals or the three biggest rituals or four biggest rituals you go through in life really would be the birth, coming into knowledge of yourself, your first child or your children, you know what I'm saying, your Saturn return, and then your actual return back to the physical essence, back to the essence. Anything you do in between all of that, anything you do in between, I don't know, I can eat it later. Anything after that is really just, you know what I'm saying? Something that you do to gain experience here. But all experience is not necessary. You know what I'm saying? Like I could want to skydive, but I don't have to do that. And if I never do that, it's only an issue for me not doing it if I place emphasis on me wanting to or regretting not doing it. Therefore, it's not the skydiving that's putting the pressure on me to do it. It's my perception and why and what I want to do it for, what I want to prove to myself to do. You know what I'm saying? Some people like aspects or extreme aspects of living, but then when it would come to something like standing up and representing yourself in court or something, they wouldn't be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? Just like some people can write great raps and all that, but they can't freestyle. And then some people can freestyle like crazy but can't write no songs. So anybody that could do both is going to get hated on. You know what I'm saying? So niggas say what they want, but as, you know, looking at hip-hop as a gauge for how most of the youth and world culture view us, with this Kendrick Lamar situation, niggas say whatever they want about what he said and how he said it or whatever, but he was there in New York. Ain't nobody saying nothing to him. And he had on the Babylon Worker shirt, the 777 shirt on. So they talking all of that, but ain't nobody stepping to him and all of that. Because we're not in the era where rappers was dying. You know what I mean? People read about that stuff. We lived it. I was up at the Source as an intern before I got to write my first article for them, going through the mail, scared to open the shit because they was talking about they got a letter that they was going to send bombs or some shit in the mail. And, of course, I'm an intern having to go through this shit. Because they used to have a big bin of all of the DVDs and tapes and stuff that they would get demos, and they would just throw it in. And then every so often, one of them would go in and dig in and try to listen to a tape or whatever. But that was the time where rappers was actually rolling truck heavy. The dudes was really in the game and in the game, like really in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody on the street know that Supreme people, the Supreme from who set up Death Row and set all of that in motion was the Don from back then. Everybody knew that this dude was his seed, 50 Cent and all of that. Everybody knew coming up. I mean, not the real 50 Cent, I mean Curtis Jackson. That guy. So when niggas make a movie about it and then allude to the whole steez, you see why and how people get in positions that they in. Because everybody come from somebody. Everybody come from somebody noble, and everybody that's of this hemisphere or of the melanated kind is either coming from an ill or a Bay background. That's it. You can be whatever other clan you want. You could be El Bay and Bay L and El Day Bay L or whatever you want, whatever, all of that. But really, that it come down to the two main streams: the RNA and the DNA, the ills and the bays, the two titles of nobility that trump all other titles of nobility, based upon our position in the world. So essentially it becomes a dominant situation where unless you stand up for who and what you are and what you're going to bring forth and what you're contributing to the national and divine movement in any way is contributing to the end of the devil on the planet. They're the only ones that can absolve everybody, because everybody love us and everybody hate us at the same time, including ourselves. We the only people preyed upon and shitted on by the people who get shitted on in their own country. In the Arab world, Indians and Filipinos and these people are the niggas over there. And the Arab is the white man. I'm talking about the ones you see, connected to what was going on, because a lot of these guys got tooled up when the United States was fighting Iran through Iraq. When they was giving Saddam money back in the 80s, a lot of these families kept that money and invested over here and sent their children to school and stuff over here. That's who you think the Shahs of Sunset and these people come from. They got ex-mob wives and mob bosses and shit on TV, fronting rap labels like they bugging. they totally bugging. And what we doing? So in the time coming, you're going to see more and more people try to come out and say how whack the prophet is and how he can do this or do that. But if you ask them where their leader's at and what their leader actually left them in terms of something that they could go to today and go all over the world and be recognized for it. Niggas could say what they want, but I was over in other countries wearing a fez. I was in an actual foreign country wearing a fez on my head. Okay? So niggas say what they want, but I did it. So it's a whole different thing when you really are functioning in your true person. First thing people want to say is, where's the other people like you at? You understand? The United States need a facelift. It needs somebody else to come in while it goes into some sort of remission to reorganize itself, so that way whatever's left of their society, they can at least have a little bit of it to enjoy, because it ain't going to be much else. most of the dudes, a lot of the dudes I came up with, a lot of them sold out early. You know what I'm saying? A lot of them made excuses as to why, you know, it was this like this or like this early. And because of it, a lot of them have come up financially. And I understand why, because in hindsight, if I knew some of the things I know now, it's like, why even bother? The first illusion you give yourself about consciousness is that when you come into this, you're going to be around a bunch of people that's on it the same way you are. You give yourself a delusion because you start to look at the people that you have come up with as liars to you because they had or could have had aspects of this knowledge and helped you get it, but for whatever reason they didn't. And now that you on it, they looking at you like you kind of whack or like you're betraying some sort of family code because you are. Because when they became whatever they became outside of their own real nationality, they put themselves outside of the grace of what they actually are talking about as God. You can't get more close to God than having its name. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't get no closer to the true and living by having Elam Bay. And once you do that, you automatically come outside of the United States by the act of the fact that they cannot harbor people with titles of nobility because they cannot profit from them. That's what it says. Which tell you that from the jump, you're dealing with a business. You ain't dealing with a country. You're dealing with people that's trying to get paid and using patriotism as a means of empire and forced conquest through hostile takeover by forcing people to abandon their estates and then setting up criminal empires and subdivisions. The mob was down with the CIA, okay? Them niggas got money together. That ain't no secret. The mob was never taken down by anybody in the CIA. That was all FBI doing that. The FBI had the Jones for them based upon what they did to Kennedy. They said, we're going to make you pay for what you did to them. And eventually they shut them down by the 80s. So by the time they started coming out with The Godfather and those type of movies, the whole society, their whole situation was already done. Because they had already made the deals towards the end of the Cold War through Glasnost to be able to bring the Russian mobs and the East European mobs from over there and give them territories that they was going to take from the WAPs over here. And that's what they did. We couldn't take over the empires then because we was too consumed with getting the crack. We was all pumping the crack. And again, CIA is playing both sides, you see. But because the mob had already engendered favors from them from the Cuba situation when they were Baptista, they agreed to help with the Kennedy thing, seeing him as an ally or a secret ally of Castro. All of this is in the papers that you can read in Project Operation Mongoose and the Bad Pig Fiasco and all of that. It's a book called The Naked Capitalist. You can read a couple other books, Secrets of the Temple, all of that. But all of these things were set in motion based upon what happened in 1928. You understand? The Geneva Conventions, everything. But you wouldn't know because they made sure you don't know. They made you so sure you don't know that they actually created people to put out a mist to get you to disbelieve it. And these were the same people, and how they freak it is that they get the people who told you about it in the first place to do it. It's what's called the diabolical plan. You understand? That's called craft by design. That's called statecraft. That's called business. business is governed by entities that are not fully good-spirited. Business does not involve love. So if you start in a business and you're not in love with it, then it's not going to work. But if you love what you're doing, it's going to pop. It just may take a while, because if you love it, you're going to preserve it and not sell out too quick and try to give it up. See what I'm saying? So integrity is something that is so intangible and seems so nothing, like, oh, it's okay, just do it. Nah, when you actually stand for something that you do, that creates integrity. Integrity is something that people can realize that's in you, that they can count on. It's loyalty before royalty, man. If they feel that you're not reliable or loyal, you could sell them out. Think about all of the people that's out there. You don't know nothing about these people. You don't know their real names. Everybody know ours. You see what I'm saying? You don't see, like, you see aspects of their life. You know what I'm saying? You see the aspects that they want you to see. And then you, the viewer, create the rest. You know how many people have created scenarios about how they think that you live in your life right now? And they only see you like once a day. They got a whole version of how you exist at home when they don't see you. And usually that has nothing to do with who you are, because it's not about you. The opposite of that is the people who create who they are and then keep the real version of themselves secret. You know what I'm saying? So I noticed that when people come up, it's just like in rap. The minute that they want you to notice them, they got to call out somebody that's already so-called popping or already in the view that they want to be in. Or they'll buddy hustle up to somebody, meaning that they'll get cool with somebody to get in position to get with the person they really want to get with to move up. That's all European temporalism. That's all a Eurozoid version of how business was brought and transplanted into nationhood over here. That's totally a foreign way of dealing. We dealt with business based upon what it is, natural equity, looking at that which should have been done, as per law, real law based in the maxims of law coming from an aspect of law that is imperious. You understand? Law dealing with ancient Moorish Latin that deals with things like coming in the form of the Rex, who was the king who came back to his kingdom and saw that it was in such a disarray that he had to manifest and bring forth the true tenets of the legal right. But Moors don't understand law, and when they talk about law or you talk about it in context, they first think about more challenging court and stuff and all of that. We're supposed to be demonstrating in the high courts, man. They want to keep you locked down in these little circuit joints that keep you going around in these mazes that don't really have the jurisdiction to do the stuff. They just playing games and dangling the carrot in front of the rabbit to make you and I feel like we have to keep proving who and what we are. because there's always somebody trying to doubt you just by being you, but they don't doubt the roster. They'll make fun of the roster, but they'll treat that like that's his nationality. They won't make fun of. They'll make fun of the Christian. They'll make fun of, but they'll accept all of that. The God body, even they'll accept all of that. When you come on some just straight Moorish on the square, 360, 720, you coming in the form of the Rex, and because the Rex is the Tyrannus or the Tyrannus, king of the reptilian, he is the one who is always referred to in prosecuting any party. You dig? So any party that gets prosecuted by the emperor or the king, instead of using the king's whole name, you can transpose it with Rex. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me. So based on that, most of the maxims at law that deal with Rex as attachment to God in the form of the king, such as Rex non potest peccare, which means the king can do no wrong, or the king can do no wrong, right? Another way would say it would be Rex nunquam mortir, which means the king never dies, long live the king, right? Or Rex est lex vivens, which is the king is the living law, or Rex est major singilius, minor universius, which means the king is greater than any single person, less than all. Rex hoc solemn non potest facare quad non potest injuste agire, excuse me. The king can do everything but an injustice. You see what I'm saying? So whenever Rex come up, it's like that, because Rex is the aspect of the true divine right of the king taking over the land. So it always has to be listed. In this society, is listed as the RX symbol that you see in the drugstore. Because that whole pharmaceutical and all of that's night hospitaler stuff. So where's the Rex in our thing? Everybody's paperwork, I don't see it nowhere else but the prophets. But because Moors don't look there, they don't do the knowledge of what's in front of their face. Because the man was wise enough to say that it would take us 60 plus years to get the knowledge. So we're in the last cycle of that now to really understand what he was putting down. When the prophet listed what he did in terms of the actual articles of paperwork, you'll see in the middle of the paperwork, in the upper part of it, in the very middle, an upside down R. That meant then that as a member of the Sultanate, going all the way back to the Hejaz and the Najad, and even before that, because that was just the Moabites bringing us back what they knew they owed us. Which at that time, Morocco became a protectorate of Saudi Arabia, which is still like that to this day. But because, again, the Moors, they barbarous, because the Saudis is not in their original form, and they barbarous and crazy, they got everybody tripping, and they not really trying to recognize until we get to that understanding about who and what we really are internationally. That can't happen when you got so many different factions that's now trying to attribute themselves as the true one. when the true one is you, your temple, because you represent the actual people, the actual building that creates the spirit that is the prophet and the creator in the form of the temple, which then gives power to the ecclesiastical district that is the people, that is the temple. Therefore, each one of us is a pillar or a piece of mortar or whatever in the correspondence of our rise into our true self. And the Moorally Temple as the earthly vehicle of that, or Moorally Temple of America as the earthly vehicle of that, is the conduit back to and ahead of a lot of the stuff that's there. Because when you put that into the mix, it makes everything else make sense. Unless you're trying to infuse it with some other stuff that's not necessarily, now this don't mean that you can't build on metaphysics and occultism and all of that, because you are more. But the basic foundations of the original government of Morocco have never been listed and put forth in a manner that the true so-called European can come through and actually manifest and say, okay, I know you're not part of it because it's not like this. The only verification of something like that he got is the MST of 8. The only people that he know got stuff registered in the Library of Congress and National Archives and all of that are these Al-Moroccans that's listed in the CDC under 409, free and clean. But that's the true one. Right here. So that upside down Rex, that R for all of that, that's reference to the king. Because, again, King Rex, the Moor of the ancient Moorish Roman Empire, this could be Hadrian or Septimius Severus or Constantinius I, specifically, all Moors. His primary concern was due to the rampant theft and bribery and all that was going on in the Roman state. He had to reorganize that because these people was running rampant, and it led to the destruction and the ushering in of the Dark Ages, when the Moors started pulling up the bootstraps on them and enslaving them and all of that. So each one of these efforts is essentially contained a defect or failure based upon how they was doing it. So based upon the 8 correlative kinds of legal excellence by which systems and rules may survive or strive to be, the 5 principles of the legal right, the 8 principles of the legal right became the foundation, essentially, of an isonomic view out of the corrupt Roman Republic that was trying to substantiate itself by taking over the dominions and stuff of Carthage. So that's where you get people like Marcus Aurelius and these people coming through and writing whole treaties and maxims and stuff on law and all of that. So the first one is generality. All laws must take the form of general rules, which means that all laws that exist must appear to be similar rules. So a rule would be, you hit me, I hit you back. But if you kill me with no just cause, then, you know what I'm saying, you have to be punished. Then it's clarity, which means that all laws have to be comprehensible and not overly vague. So that means all laws in the business state of the United States are totally outside of that. We've already proven that they're not general because they don't apply to everybody and everybody don't understand them. 2, clarity-wise, they don't understand that. 2 is publicity. Yeah, so when you go in and come out the other side and realize that a lot of the stuff that's being spouted is really just slander. You know what I'm saying? It's not even of any moral or consequent value for you to deal with. It's just some stuff for you to now look at and despise and look at as just another movement that just seems as disjointed and fractured as everything else. But that's what you're supposed to see it as. And who benefits from that? These are the questions that we seldom ask ourselves, but lead to our own apathy and lack of zeal when it comes to understanding the true purpose. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and challenge a lot of what the garbage that you see out there, because that's also dignifying it with a reply. And a lot of people would want that type of energy to exist. You know what I'm saying? So that way they could feed off that and then, bring down somebody else that may be trying to bring some semblance of truth. These are just the things, or the semblance of things to get us caught up in stuff that's really irrelevant. You know what I'm saying? That's why, like I said, the next rule of right would be consistency. Laws must not contradict one another. We already know the United States don't deal with that. Feasibility, it must be possible for people to comply with the law, which again is sometimes erroneous. Constancy, the law must not change too rapidly. They're changing the law every 100 days. They're flipping the laws into something else. Prospectivity, the law cannot be retroactive. It cannot today declare yesterday's lawful behavior unlawful today. And then congruence, which would be the law which must be administered and enforced as it is written. So the conflicts can come in sometimes in a constancy where laws must be feasible for people to comply with. So if the law under the titles of nobility say that you cannot be a citizen of the United States, then that also means then you cannot be treated like a citizen of the United States by law if the United States say so. So that means if the United States try to deal with you and you present the fact that you are a foreign national, i.e. a Moorish national, they're supposed to contact the Department of State. The Department of State then contacts who? They don't contact any of these so-called organizations that exist today that you see as more as that the only people they contact is the grand body of the Home Office. See what I'm saying? That's who they verifying. That's who's verifying that. But you don't know who those people are. See what I'm saying? Because they don't know who you are. You see what I'm saying? Because you kept from people like that, because these dudes got everybody looking in the opposite direction, looking at all of this pageantry that has nothing to do with real work. So people who think that being as somebody who did work on the street for years before I even had a website or even an email address, I'm glad, but there has to come a time when the street chooses to raise itself up and become the neighborhood, meaning take the hood off and become the neighborhood again. See what I'm saying? Because the neighborhood, it was love. Look at all of the shows that showed how the kids got down in the neighborhood back in the day. It was all love. What's happening? What you call it? 227. It was the neighborhood. It didn't become the hood until after Menace of Society and NWA and all that shit. Now again, I'm not blaming the people in the West, because to me that represented the Anubis thing rising up to kind of protect it from the crack thing that they was trying to infringe on us psychologically. But niggas bought into that so deep now that it's really become what people perceive somebody to be in that. So when you do anything different within that vehicle, you are seen as a usurper, and they attack you. Look what they did to T-Pain, man. Like, y'all gave up T-Pain for Future? There's like one or two songs I thought was cool, but come on, man. T-Pain was a genius. You know what I mean? But we're at a time now where again, the most benign is like, oh, that's the dopest shit that's out. But as we see, even NSYNC can get back together for a second. So you mean to tell me Outkast can't do an album? That's what I mean, man. So the next phase that they want to make move up is going to be who? It's got to be people from the conscious community. It's got to be. Yet, watch how they pick and choose who it's going to be. Watch. I told you this. I told you what was going to happen after the debates and all of that, from the Welcome to Obama tape and the Welcome to Obamatopia tape and the Truth About Barry tapes. I was telling you what they was going to do. Everything I talked about on that came true, man. Not because I'm a prophet, but because based upon behavior, you got to understand we're dealing with the same people that sold us out in 1774 that'd rather be goddamn slaves than to preserve their original forefathers' government, man. It's to what? To sell molasses and fur, to buy white women and tobacco? Come on, man. We grew that. So there are 5 elements to a legal right. So a person in whom the right is vested and who may be distinguished as owner of the right and subject of it, or the person entitled. A person whom it is vested meaning put on, over your chest, your heart, your armor, which represented the truth aspect of the Roman. Each piece of the Roman armor represented an aspect of God. But again, Romans was white people, so we really shouldn't be studying them, and they was homosexuals and all of that. Well, okay, that's the Roman state was like that. What about the Roman Republic and the Holy Roman Empire that became the Hanseatic League and the Habsburg League? What about that? Who then brought the Hessians and the Huguenots and the Dutch Empire over here? All them people was black. Excuse me, they was Moorish. Because black was the designation for those of them who were Barbary pirates and under the designation of the trademark by whatever nation was using them in the war. So the first element of legal right is that you must be entitled. So the only people who are entitled are people with titles. Your title is Il and Bey or Bey. 2, the person whom the right avails and upon whom the correlative duty lies. He may be distinguished as the person bound or as the subject of the duty, meaning the person in whom the right avails, that's me, and upon whom the correlative duty lies, that's them. He may be distinguished as the person bound or as the subject of the duty. The subject of my duty is Morris Temple of America. The subject of my duty is love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. You see what I'm saying? See how it all works together? 3, the act or omission which is obligatory on the person bound in favor of the person entitled. This may be termed the content of the right. Therefore, the content of the right is obligatory on the person bound in favor of the person entitled. I am the person entitled. In the case of Trayvon Martin, he was the person entitled because he was the heir. His pops was the person bound because he was the Freemason attached to the lodge that happened to have sister connection to the lodge that Cheney was a part of, who happened to get a new heart within the whole 7 days that they couldn't find Trayvon's body. But that's another story. 4, something to which the act or omission relates and which may be termed the object or subject matter of the right. The subject matter of the right of the ill and bay was recognized through House Joint Resolution 75, which in conjunction with Title 26 of the Constitution says that the titles of nobility means that I am not a citizen of the United States. But by the same context in House Joint Resolution 75, it states that I have the right to go back to my original title, ill and bay. So one document, the Constitution, says that based upon my title, I can't be a citizen of the United States, meaning I can't be subject to it. Then, within the United States, they created a document to verify the fact within their government that I have the right to live and use the name of which I have been entitled. How I was entitled to use it. This name happened to go back to God on earth as it is in heaven, and is to be used and ascribed to any property that I own on earth as it is in heaven. So I really don't have nothing to do with it. Really. The Moors really don't have nothing to do with this. This is about God. This is about the divine and national movement. The part of you that is bound essentially by the legal right of your title. Because the fifth element of the right is a title. That is to say, certain facts or events by reason of which the right has become vested in its owner. Why was this vested in me? Because I accepted the express trust. What was the express trust? The Circle 7 Quran, the Fez, the temple card, the dues that I pay. You see what I'm saying? Therefore, it's done. The act of omission that was put out against Trayvon essentially was the fact that he was omitted. His nationality was omitted, and his father, for whatever reason, gave up his nationality, which forced his son, who was entitled, to take the gag. That's why he said that it was his fault that this happened. But he's doing fine. They're doing fine, man. They're doing shows and rallies and marches and stuff. They good, man. The free trade agreement between Turkey and Morocco was signed on April 7, 2004 to boost the bilateral trade and the economic relations between the two countries. The two sides have agreed on a 10-year transition period to set up a zone of free trade and industrial zone. While Turkey offers new opportunities for Morocco to reach European markets, Morocco provides a springboard for Turkey to conquer North African and American markets, because North Africa is America. Therefore, this is why they hit in Turkey. You see what I'm saying? That's why Turkey getting put through it. Because there was also talks with the Turks where they were talking about They wrote some steves where they got it listed where they was trying to, on the books where they trying to reinstate the Fez as the national headdress over there to correspond with the hold on, to correspond with the rebirth of our Islam in the West. Look at the annals of the records of the Turkish parliament. Right after that, that's when they just It happened to get hit with an earthquake. But they still hating on them from based on what happened with the whole Israel flotilla thing. The prophet addressed this in the form of what was called the Address on the Types of Laws, which is from chapter 41, page 51, verse 13, where it says, when our divine prophet Noble Drew Ali founded this national movement, he put the laws in place for all members to follow. That's the divine bylaws in the Constitution, right? That's also what the Sheiks got in the form of the Red Book and the Adept Chamber, as well as the Charter and Warrant of Authority, which then added with the Express Trust being the actual vast estate, being the land. Okay. So they became, or we became autonomous, or totally dependent upon ourselves at that point. Recognized even internationally through the House of Saud that basically holds everybody else down, and was supposed to, right? Then you got the first type of law that the Prophet put in place called a rule. As a founder of this movement, Noble Drew Ali put in place rules that must be observed by all members. The second type of law that our Prophet put in place was called a regulation. Our Prophet exercised his authority and put in place regulations that dealt with the details and procedures of everyday operation of the movement. The third type of law that our Prophet put in place was called a principle. A principle is a comprehensive fundamental type of law that controls our conduct. No, this is what everybody's supposed to have. You know, thus we can understand why Noble Drew Ali said we must proclaim and practice the 5 great principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. I just read off to you the 5 principles of a legal right. They all correspond to each one of the divine principles that the Prophet put down. Because the very structure, think about what I'm telling you, the very structure of the United States of America changed after 1928. Whatever they was trying to do up until February 27, 1928, it all switched up. And if you look at what happens in history, forget what these niggas are saying, forget what the History Channel is trying to tell you, forget what all of that, look at the actual records. The United States was never the same. It ceased to exist because the next year they went into bankruptcy. So look at what I'm saying. 26, the Sultanate is set up, which acknowledged the true monarchy all over the world. 27, he put out the document where they all got to capitulate to it in Europe. 28, by the time that they file in that document, he shows up, pops up in Cuba and handing over the deed to North Central South America back to the man in 28. 29, in the same year, the man then comes back and then files it in the Torrance title as a vast estate. That's it. Irrevocable. So when you hear Moors that's telling you that's an irrevocable trust that existed before their grandparents can be rated by the current United States, when everything that existed in the old United States was frozen and reserved for the original National Republic, so much so that they had to put our seal back on their money, in which now they have to reorganize their entire structure, where their president now is only supposed to serve for really 3.5 or 4 years. This nigga gonna serve for 12 years, this FDR, for 12 years with polio to get this thing right, to establish a new deal for you to now deal with. But 3 days after the bankruptcy, The first thing that they put out was something to represent that you were exempt from what they was putting down on everybody else. By 33, they was totally bankrupt. By 34, they're in the war. They're in the war in 34. They've been fighting the war from 34 to 45. They're done. The only reason why they had money was because they funded the Nazis by taking them out of Montauk Point, sending them over there as a political party, getting this dude to front it, getting what's his name in them to write all of the words and stuff, prop them up, Obama them out, and then burn the Reichstag, and then that was it. They was basically destroyed from World War I. So how they rebuild their whole country in 5 years? The whole country ain't do that. Who paid for that? Where'd the money come from? When everybody was dissing them for losing the war. Because they lost, that's what had the Turks wind up losing by 1913. So 3 days after they declared the bankruptcy, they put something out to look out for the Moors, but they put it out in Philadelphia because that was the last capital that they knew that we was in. Because they got to keep the real Mecca, which is Chicago, secret, because they've been having Geneva conferences ever since 28 to figure out how they're going to deal with that. So the League of Nations is set up, and they're trying to flip that. But Selassie is like, and John Nichols is like, nah, this is going to take my sovereignty and make me like I got to be in allegiance with him when I got my own thing. And then Raza Lula is like, nah, this is what we're supposed to do. But he's like, nah, so we're going to have Ethiopia. We're going to have everybody in Ethiopia speaking Ge'ez. That's going to be our national language. And the prophet's like, cool, do that, but we all got to have a central accord. So that's why when you look at the newsreels and the photographs of the League of Nations, you see all of these Moors there. You see all these dark-skinned Moors with feathers and turbans on talking to these white males. Because of that, that's what led to the conference in Belgium. They've been reorganizing everything ever since because of the prophet and Garvey. Garvey was going to have the army, and then the prophet was going to have the movement, which would be the government. Because through Garvey, he had North, Central, and South America. You had Garveyites in Honduras, in Bolivia, and places like that, all over. That's when the white man talk about the Marxist republics and all of that, that's us. They not talk about the niggas that was following Marx and all that. That's the cover. The pattern of intergovernment relationship between the United States as a corporation or business and the South America has always been coup d'etat, destabilization, mass genocide. This is what they do. That's what they've been doing in South America. That's why everybody from South America wound up here. Forced migration to then come in and have to work in the United States under a false designation. Your nationality gone. And now in your country, they buying up the land and taking your house and turning it into a condo for some white man to leave, for the white man who you work for to come down there on vacation and buy the house that you had to leave. So what? Because I can understand it to that level, or I understand it on that level, that means I hate white people or I hate South American people? No. It means I understand it to such a degree that I'm not even caught up to the point where anybody who identifies themselves as a color to me is telling me that they are seeing themselves in a lesser form. That's not a judgment by me of them. That is the present system that we are in. I'm not creating this pathos, or this pathos, excuse me. This is what it is. our people are locking each other up, shooting each other up daily. Daily. Discarding their babies, going crazy daily. Twerking themselves to death daily. Playing themselves nationally in front of the world daily. Daily. There is a pressure on these black entertainers and these people to, when they get to a certain level, distance themselves from their own original people. And to an aspect and a degree, I can see why. Because a lot of our people are sick. We sick, man. And we don't want to deal with it. This self-imposed exile, inferiority, isolation complex that says that I can't be me, really me, have fun and laugh and all of that, but because I don't eat pork or I don't eat a pig or I choose to wear my national headdress because I like how it feels on me, then somehow or another that's making you feel whack about you or what you're not doing about you. That's not my problem. I don't even be talking about what I am and what I believe in, all of that like that. People be really having to engage me. But I know once I really start, if we really start going in and getting cool, it's only going to be a certain amount of time. Because somebody around you that's close to you is not going to be able to deal with it. That's just what it is, yo. It's real talk. Like, you understand, I'm 40. Can't tell me nothing. I already know. You understand? Like, I've watched it. And I've seen it happen also to people who I'm not, like, who's just telling me, who I'm building with through this. Because this is the type of experience that this type of knowledge and stuff bring out. That's why I say it ain't for everybody. If you're the social type of person and you want to be out there and you want to be, you know, you can do that. But when the 5 want to raid the club and you know what I'm saying, and lock everybody up and all that, you better know how to demonstrate. Be able to know how to stash them ones and put down that crystal or whatever and get sober and really know how to really talk your way in, man. Because, like I'm just telling you, the way that the man set it up, spiritually, there's a certain code and a moral way you got to be. So if you one of these Moors that's out here or one of these dudes who know better, but then you, because you cut out of the temple, the real temple now, you can't really get no real burn with Moors because they don't already really figured you out. Both, when I say Moors, I'm talking about men and women. Then there's an aspect of you that got to get right. Because we all God's children. We all family of the prophet. So there's redemption possibility for everybody. But it's just some certain sins that call for universal justice. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I mean about really being noble with this. It really takes you far. It puts you in positions that you don't even realize you being groomed to be in. Those of us that came up outside of any specific Moorish science temple came up in the secular world. Therefore, we had to become cultured, you know what I'm saying, to get to a point where we understand the unification of the grand body and unifying with a grand body. What that means both physically and spiritually. It provides the protection and the international things for you to be able to do. Because you'll be able to go and do things that a lot of regular American people won't be able to do. You don't got to get permission to go see the body of Jesus and all of that at the Holy Sepulchre and all of that from the Pope. You could just go. Because it's Muslims protecting that thing. Understand? They're not going to bomb Jerusalem. There'll be a conventional type of war eventually, but it's not going to be totally bombed out until the whole Iran thing sorted out. But that's never really going to happen because they're not going to be able to beat them. That's why they have to make sure to lock down all the countries that surround Iran so that way they could really get in, especially now through Syria. That Saudi monarchy that I talked about is why you have all of these different monarchies from all these different Arabic nations. That's how you know that they're not all Muslims, that some of them are functioning as Muslims, because Muslims can't have no monarchy. They can't have no king, no thing like that. You understand? But a lot of these guys are part of lodges and things like that, like the Great Lodge at Egypt, at Cairo, that was also presided by the president of the Moorish Union, a Moor in the 1900s named Moorally Ali. So, like I said, we have this rich culture that was over here that was Moorish, or that is original, you know what I mean? And when I say Moorish, I'm talking about all-inclusive, like if you can imagine in the 1600s and the 1500s, you know what I'm saying, having the buildings that you see in the square Philadelphia and all of that built, as well as pyramids and mounds and stuff all over the place, and parts of the country that are done regionally, as well as people wearing, plume feathers and all of that, like you see the Delaware, these type of people wear. That's us. And then further down south, you have the Aztecs and the Incas and these type of people who dress like that. But then in the North Carolinas and stuff, you have those type of Moors who came up with Charles V, also known as Carlos Quint, descended from the southern regions of America. You know what I'm saying? Coming into the family, was one of the first people from the Holy Roman Empire to come over here and marry into the families through Montezuma and them. So this is before all of the conquest that came with the Moriscos and the conquistadors, who were then followed by the other people. That's why to this day the Colon family can go to and speak to the Pope at any time if they want, and always occupy a high position in the Society of Jesus and the order itself. They are what they call Jesuits of the fourth bow. So as much as these people act like these things are just fraternal organizations for people to do charity work and all of that, that's true, you know what I'm saying? But make no mistake, the Salvation Army is an army. You understand? The Postmaster General is a general. You understand? There's real shit going on, and our folk is caught up, unfortunately, in a lot of the accoutrements and not what actually is. So what we got to do as Moors is allow whatever combative confusion that they're creating to ally themselves to some sort of new version of this, while ignoring, you know what I'm saying, and at sometimes slandering the very people who made it possible for them to get to the level to do that. I'm not so arrogant to say that if it was not for Dr. Ben and these people, who a lot of times I don't agree with, if it was not for them, I would not have the ability to have the insight that I have. So it's not even about whether I agree with you or I like you. I'm talking real talk. When you set up yourself to be the ancestor without acknowledging the ancestor that exists in the people, that is a form of spiritual rape. But there are some people who get fucked sexually on spiritual rape and set themselves up to be perpetual victims through that circumstance. Okay? So essentially, look for them now that the awards done went off to get another celebrity out of here in their world. You know what I'm saying? based upon us going into fall now and us being into Virgo, or for them to pull some crazy people like that to then hide some of the stuff that they're dealing with based upon this China situation, as well as, you know, the domestic situation that's happening with the temples. And based upon this period we in, this is the time for those people who really want to get it straight, to get it straight with those people who are informed enough to at least tell you the truth about it. So if that's something that you're interested in, holler at me at houseofl@hotmail.com, and we can set up a consultation. And then if it's something that you're still trying to do, really, and then, you know what I mean, we'll get into it. And it's something that we all supposed to do that was set up for us. But there was a whole movement right now that's pushing to get you to disavow any aspect of that and embrace something that is less tangible and less real than something that is actually proven to be in the world. So, like I said, holler at me at houseofl@hotmail.com. You could also check out the Queen's work at www.cookingmorewithless.com. You could also check out Saga Assad's work at www.sagaassad.com. If you like the song in the beginning, look for a couple of music videos with us coming soon from the album, the soundtrack mixtape album CD, the soundtrack to the book that you can get at www.darkscope418.com. The album you can get under the name Team Cordoba at tunecore.com. It's really dope. And again, if you want to holler at us about the establishment as well as the consecration of Maury's emissaryship and things like that, you can hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com, and we can take it from there. So if you have any letters or anything like that, hit me up via email through that, and we can, again, set up private consultations, lectures, book signings, readings, things like that. So inshallah, you'll be safe. May all of our ancestors protect us and guide us in the times to come. And may those who slander the names of the true and living and the prophet burn 1,000 times within the iniquity of their own tongue. And let those of us who know better rise above and be better, so that way we can always be of love, truth, peace, freedom, justice, and equality. Love and light.